Hey everybody, I think that we would all agree that worm castings are a tremendous benefit to our gardens and our soils for soil improvement, plant health, and just growing plants that we love. So today what I'm doing is I have one of our empty worm bins, and I have one right here that needs a little bit of reviving and cleaning up. So the way I usually set this up is, if you can see this, I have this one tub, doesn't have any holes in it, has a drain on one end in case there's any liquid that needs to be drained out. And in these worm bins where we create the worm castings, we usually start off with coconut coir in the bottom of these, and that's the material that they will be living in. The one that I like to use is Plant Onyx Cocoa Bliss Premium Coconut Coir Pith. It comes in this box with, I think there's 5 of these. This is my last one. They come in these blocks. So what I normally do is take one of the blocks. So I've already done one here, but I'm going to need to do another one. I will take this block and put it in a 5-gallon bucket. Now this little block will hold approximately 2 gallons of water. When you add the water to it and start breaking this up, what you end up with is your coconut coir that is nice and moist. So I should be able to just squeeze a little bit of moisture out of that, and I can. So this one has enough. Then I'll save this block for the next one that I'm going to do. So I've got a clean tub here for the worm castings. I'm sorry, for the worms that I'm going to transfer. So I'm going to start by putting my mix into this bucket right here. So I've got it in there, a little bit more in the bottom. Let's get all of that, and then we'll do the other one when I refresh this other tub. So now I've got this in the tub. I'm basically just going to spread it out here across the bottom. Now the worms will eat this. They will bed in it, nest in it, consume it. And we also bring kitchen scraps from the house to feed to the worms. A worm bin these sizes is probably about a cup a week. And one of their favorite things we found are banana peels. They really use those up quickly. And the other thing they like a lot are apples and things like that. We try not to put anything with seeds that will sprout in here, but almost any food waste these guys will consume. Now, to separate the worm castings and the worms so that we keep what we want, I use a kitty scoop. This kitty scoop, for kitty litter, I think, is where I got what I have this for, but we don't have any cats anymore. And I will just sift it, and I will save, and I'll try to pull off any of the live worms that are on the top and put them back in. Takes a little bit of time. And if there's a better way to do this, I am all ears, but this is the best way I have found for home use for doing this. And I'm basically just going to sift that until I feel like there aren't any more or very few of the worms. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to separate out the worm castings from the worms themselves. So really I'm going to do this over another canister to collect the worm castings that I want to save. So for today, basically when I do this, I'm going to start putting some of these worms in this new one, and then put the new coconut coir and new worms in this one as well. And then I'll have 2 tubs for creating vermicompost and getting the worm castings out of there. But that is beautiful, dark and rich, and this is absolutely full of these little worms. So they create a lot of worm castings. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then when I get it prepared, I'll show you what we do at the end. So I decided to go ahead and show you. I just have a food grade bucket here. It doesn't really matter what kind of bucket it is. I've got some other ones that I have lids for that I'll transfer this to. But more or less what I'm trying to do is get it to go through this kitty litter with some kind of a strainer, whatever type you have and can use. And if I find live worms, I just pull those guys out, put them back in the media, and that way they'll be happy. Actually, I should be putting them in the new one that I just prepared, so we'll get them in that one instead. And what we'll end up with is this bucket that has a lot of the worm compost, the worm castings in here, and then this bucket, or whichever one I store it in, will be ready for use in the garden. So just take some time to go through, keep as many of the worms as I possibly can. They do reproduce in here, so part of what's in the worm castings are actually eggs from the worms. So when I get close to the bottom, sometimes you'll drop one or two in your bucket. Just pull them out and put them in where you're going to keep them. Try to make sure you don't have any live worms. And these are little guys. They're usually not very big. So if you can see that or not, but these little worms are pretty small. But the whole idea is to have some way to sift all of the material that you've been feeding them in, and to save as many of the worms as possible. And that way you end up with just the worm castings in your bucket, and the worms will go in these two bins when I'm finished. So I'm going to go ahead and strain all of this and go through it, and I'll be back in a minute. All right, so it took me about 20-25 minutes to sift so that I could get two bins out of one worm bin. So this bucket is full, or about half full, almost half full, right here with nothing but worm castings. So as I sifted the worms in here using the little kitty poop scooper, I just kept turning the bucket and making sure that I didn't have any other worms in there and any trash or debris or anything like that. I do find that there are things that the worms simply won't break down or eat, and things like peach peels. Every once in a while, I don't know where this comes from, but little bits of plastic, little bits of plastic, I don't have a clue how that gets in there. Things like skins off of some of the peppers they may not eat, but I just try to clean it up and make sure that there's nothing in there that's not of value. So I have both bins. Both bins are full. Worms typically live in the top 6 inches of soil. So in here I'll typically have 4 or 5 inches, and as I said before, I'll feed them about a cup a week. I did go ahead and chop up a little bit of carrots, some old carrots, so I'm going to drop some carrots in there next. So just kind of spread those out in the bin, and normally in these bins it is about a cup a week that they will consume of waste and turn it into gold. So beautiful worm castings for beneficial organisms in the soil. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've got the carrot sticks in there. I've got some old newspaper that I had there, but I'm going to put some fresh ones in here. What I do at the end is I have a little spray bottle, and I'll spray. I did get it wet. Again, I soaked the coconut coir in water. It took about a gallon and a half for each one of those cubes, but you just don't want it standing in water. You just want to make sure it's nice and moist. So the newspaper, because worms live underground, they like it dark, I will simply cover the worm castings and their food with some of this old newspaper. Don't worry about the ink or any of these things that are in there. They will actually consume this paper. They will consume it and clean out any of the toxins and things that might be in that. Has been my experience. So we'll get some paper over these guys to make sure they stay in the dark. Everybody gets these flyers in the mail. Some people like them, some people hate them, but this is what I use them for, worm bins. So these bins aren't quite long enough for the paper, so I just fold over an end, Put enough paper in there to cover. And pretty simple. Just put some as you need it in there to make sure all of your soil looks like it is covered. For your media for the worms, make sure it's all nice and covered. So once that's covered, I'm going to spray the paper. I want the paper to be wet, and every day or two, depending on the situation, every day or two, I will come and I will spray just the top, just spray the paper, and about once a week I will feed them, just about a cup in each bin. But I want the paper wet. I don't want them to dry out. So getting the paper wet is helpful in holding the moisture in there. Just a little spray bottle is great for that. The paper will absorb a lot of that water and hold the moisture. And then for each one of these bins, I have a lid. We're going to put lids on them. Now these two particular bins are made to stack on each other. This bin has holes in the bottom. This bin does not. So this bin will be the one on the top. I'm sorry, the one on the bottom, so it can drain into the other bucket. So we'll put the lids on there. We'll put them in the tote. This doesn't have any holes, so it just catches any moisture that might come out. I just don't want it all over the shop floor. These bins also, if you didn't notice, have air holes in the sides. If you can see those, there are air holes all the way around both sides and both ends of the buckets. So if you want to create your own worm castings, it's really not hard. And it's hard to say, depends on how many you have, but typically I'll get this much, maybe a little bit more. I also put some of the worm castings in both of these because, again, that has some of the eggs for the worms in it. And will help give them a good kickstart. There was a place that I was buying the worms from called Texas Worm Farm, or Texas Worm Ranch. That's where these buckets or these bins originally came from. I'm not 100% sure if they're still in business or they've been bought out or sold or what, but wherever you can find your worms, you typically buy them they'll come in a bag. It will have a lot of the worm castings and media and stuff in there. But you're going to do the same thing. You're going to start with a coconut coir. Just like I separated these bins, put one of those blocks or just enough coconut coir to give you 3 to 5 inches of material in the bottom of your bin. Feed them, make sure it's nice and moist, and you should be good to go. If you have any comments or questions about vermiculture or using these worm bins, please leave a comment below. I hope you will like our video, give us a big thumbs up on the way out, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.